everybody. Hello and welcome to another episode 28, in fact, of Hot for Teacher. Feels like it's been a long time since we did one of these, so I'm glad to be back. I feel like I've said that more than once. I mean, we're only on episode 28, so there's so many questions. You have so many things, and every once in a while, I notice that within a short vicinity, there are a few related questions. Today is one of those days. Today I found 3 questions that relate to work, particularly the interactions between coworkers. So we're going to talk a little bit about what kinds of things might come up if you work at a company, if you work in an organization, if you are forced day in and day out to interact with other human beings, and maybe human beings that you don't want to interact with, or maybe they're human beings you really want to interact with, if you get my meaning. So if this is your first episode of Hot for Teacher, hi, first of all, thanks for coming and watching. Hot for Teacher is a bit of an aberration in terms of content, but also like very much a normal part of the content that I normally create. What we do here is we talk about relationships. And by relationships, I mean sex, I mean love, I mean friendship, I mean enemyship, friend, hate, disliking. Basically the various and sundry of being a human being and having to interact with other human beings. It's a thing that we all are forced to do or do intentionally, depending. And the way we do it is just like office hours. I'm answering questions from you. And the point of those questions is not only to get advice from me, but to just have something for us all to discuss. So today's theme is relationships in the workplace. And how they can affect us. And maybe as you're watching this, you'll be thinking about your own workplace. Mine, particularly, is very strange. I don't have any coworkers. My boss is a real asshole who makes me work all the time. But also, I don't know anybody else in the world that I love more than my boss, which is like kind of a weird thing to say. But your workplace is probably somewhat more normative. Maybe you work in an office. Maybe you work in academia. Maybe you are an industrial welder. I don't know what you do, but hopefully we can address some of the stuff that might come up as a result of being in a workplace. Now, I often talk about the sort of 2 places that we get like unintentionally or unwarranted socializing, right? You have, as a kid, you have school, right? You go to kindergarten, you go to elementary school, you go to high school, and you are put in an environment with a whole bunch of other people. And maybe you become friends with some of them, maybe you don't, but you're around them all the time for hours every day for years of your life, the same people. And then you leave school and maybe you get a job, and at your job, you end up in the same place where you have maybe a smaller amount of people, but you're constantly interacting with them. There are hierarchical power structures, but it's all a lot more complicated. And we like to imagine that work and high school or work and elementary school are very different because we're all grown-ups now, right? Right? Nobody at a job ever behaves like they're still in high school. That never happens. And all of the power structures of a job, they're invented by adults, and we're all here to work on the same projects, and we're all like really excited to focus on this team effort together, and we can get over our troubles, and we can act like grown. No, none of that is true. We basically operate more or less the same way, even though we may have better tools or a better developed idea of what it's like to be a person in that environment. There is still a lot of stuff that is the same. And one of those things I find is this kind of Stockholm syndrome that can develop where we think that we have to be best buds with the people that are around us simply because they're around us. And there's a lot of stuff here around like community building and being able to tolerate the presence of people who drive you crazy. But I want to answer your specific questions. I think that we, to some degree or another, we've all had some experience with mass socialized experiences, whether they're school or work. You're going to find that a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today applies just as well. So if you've never really had a job like this before, maybe you don't anymore, you can still look at these questions as being more about an environment in which we are placed unintentionally or intentionally, but surrounded by people unintentionally, and have to make some choices around how to behave. Or in the case of our first question asker, what to do when other people behave in ways that maybe we don't appreciate. So our first question comes from Night Eyes with 3 S's, and they have a question about gender in the workplace. Yeah, so I'll read you Night Eyes' question here. So I'm working for a software company, which can probably be expected, is a male-dominated space. Yes, I can expect that. That's kind of how it goes right now. There is a bit of a better split here, as marketing and customer service are all in-house too. From the get-go, I've been super open about being queer because it's something I joked about, but also broke up with a female partner at the start of work, so it was something that came up naturally. However, the fact that I am non-binary did not. I'm frequently misgendered and lumped in with the girls on my team, which can be a bummer when you lump it in with customers basing gender on your voice. It's a lot, right? Now that the preamble's out of the way, the question that I want to pose is, how would you breach this kind of topic in a work environment? I'm not super close friends with my coworkers yet, but they've usually been pretty chill. The awkwardness mostly comes from the fact that after all the times I was misgendered before, I never corrected or protested the way they referred to me, so it feels odd bringing it up out of the blue now. From Night Eyes, whose pronouns are they, them. So there's a few things in here I thought were really interesting, above and beyond Night Eyes' question, which I can only sort of address because as a cis person, I have only very, very rarely had to correct people's pronouns for me. But I can talk a little bit about the burden of this work and how it's not all on you, Night Eyes. And I can maybe reassure you about some stuff. But what I thought was really interesting, just from the get-go in this question, is this idea that, A, working at a software company, you expect it to be a male-dominated space. And not just you, Night Eyes, but like people in general. Like if I were to say to you, imagine a meeting at a software company. Maybe they make like mobile games. Imagine the people who are in this meeting, right? What does the manager look like? What do the people in the seats look like? What do you imagine these people to be? I think that we have some biases around what we think that this environment looks like, right? So I thought that was interesting. And then the follow-up, there's a better gender split here as marketing and customer service are all in-house too. So what's happening here is like men at a software company, marketing and customer service are ladies. And it's one of these things where it's like, it's a bias in part because it's true, because there's a bias, because it's true because there's a bias, because it's true because it's a bias. So there's this recurrent thing. And I've seen folks talk a lot about this, especially in community management for things like games or products where they have a community manager. Those roles tend to be where non-men get placed. And I think it's really interesting and speaks to a much, much larger kind of endemic condition in industries where we still think that we have man jobs and not man jobs, right? Which traditionally falls into lady jobs, it's interesting. It's very interesting. And I've been in situations where, where that absolutely affects the day to day and is a thing. So, I wonder about this, and I wonder from a perspective of how we think about what genders and what jobs go together. I wonder how we can do a better job of separating those kinds of things, right? How we can work away from that. Imagine a firefighter. What do they look like? Imagine a coder. What do they look like? Imagine a nurse. What do they look like? This idea of pairing work and gender. And I think that this is a pretty normal, I'm not a gender studies expert or anything, but I think this is a pretty normal thing for society as it currently stands. This idea that we assume that I'm shaking my head because it's so asinine, as we think that colors have a gender, or certain toys have gender, or whatever behaviors have genders. It's a confusing situation. Yeah. So So anyway, that structural stuff above and beyond. This is really about Night Eyes being put in a position where they are being misgendered by their coworkers, which is like a bummer thing to have happen, obviously. But can we talk about what I think is the most important part of this question? Like, this is the thing I wanted to focus on mostly. And that's where Night Eyes says, the awkwardness mostly comes from the fact that after all the times I was misgendered before, I never corrected or protested the way they referred to me. So it feels odd just to bring it up out of the blue now. So let's start there. Night Eyes, it's never odd. Ever. Like, I don't care if somebody calls you ma'am 1,000 times for... I mean, let's imagine, as is often the case, let's imagine when you were born, a doctor looked at you, tiny squealing baby Night Eyes, and said, "This baby is a lady baby. It's a baby, lady. Your baby is a lady. Here's your lady baby, lady. That's a girl. You have a girl there." And then for years and years, people were like, "Oh, look at that girl. What a girl. Look at this lady. What a lady that is." And now you're like, "Hey, no, stop it. That is not the gender that is correct for me." Nobody said, "Well, hey, where were you in the doctor's office?" Right? Why didn't you emerge from the womb and say, they, them pronouns, please? Right? There is never a point at which it is too late for you to say, "Actually, let me just correct you there. When you refer to me and you don't use my name, they, them pronouns, please." Now I know that's hard, right? I know that it's hard to say that, and you feel like it's your fault because you didn't say anything the very first time you were misgendered and you lost your opportunity, and somebody's going to say to you, "Well, where were you when I misgendered you the first time?" But it's never too late. It's never too late to just be like, hey, they, them, please. Right? And you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to do it to everybody. You don't have to get up at the middle of the all hands meeting and be like, "I am a non-binary person." You can choose the people. You can choose the people that you want to or feel safe correcting first. You can recruit teammates, right? So yeah, you work in an office, and maybe not everybody has the best handle on how gender works. Maybe there are people who are going to be like, I don't know if I can do this whole they, them thing. I'm a grammatical essentialist, and then they fall out a window and get hit by a car. But you don't have to go after those people first. You can find the people that are closest to you, right? The ones that are you felt comfortable with joking about being queer, right? You can have those people that you felt comfortable talking about your breakup with early on. Those people that you feel like might actually be your friends and who are not just work people, right? Start with them. So when they misgender you, or even outside the incident, right? Even outside the like, "This is Night Eyes. She's great. Actually, they're great. Me, that's them. I'm you in this." Anyway, you can talk to these people in advance. You can go to them with the same stuff you just brought me, right? This stuff that you just texted me. You can go to those people that you feel safe with, and you can say, "Hey, so I've been thinking about this, and I noticed that I get misgendered sometimes, and it feels weird for me, and it'd be super cool for me as a way of helping everyone in the office get their shit together vis-a-vis my pronouns, if you could make sure that you refer to me as they." Recruit those people, and if they are cool, if they're actually your friends and your allies, they will nod and they will say, "Damn, yes, I will help you in your quest." And then they can start helping other people do better as well, right? So from my perspective as a cis person, that would be where I would want to be. I would hope that the trans or non-binary people that I worked with felt like I was the kind of person that they could come to and say, "Hey, help me with this. Then I could use my power and privilege as a cis white person to correct other people. And then that takes some of the load off of you. And I think that this is something that we can constantly work towards. We can look at our lives and we can say, how are we as people with privilege, whatever that privilege looks like, how can we utilize it to help people that have less or who are struggling, who are marginalized, right? We can create an environment in which you, Night Eyes, are not alone, right? And I want this to be something, while I'm saying this to you, I want you to be able to be thinking of these people. I want there to be these people in your office for you. I know you're not super close friends with your coworkers yet, but you don't have to be super close friends with someone to gender them properly. They use your name, right? They say, "Hi, Night Eyes. How are you this morning?" That's not hard. Neither is gendering you correctly. So, if somebody messed up your name, you'd want to correct them. And I get it. I get that it's hard, and I get that there is pressure to conform. You don't want to. I have been that person. I absolutely developed a reputation at the advertising firm that I worked at as being the guy who would be like, actually, this feels kind of like misogynist, or that thing you said, that's sort of could come across as racist. Maybe we can talk about that. To the point where people would say something and they know that it's like a little edgy, and they would look at me in meetings and be like, "Adam, do you want to tell us why we're bad humans?" And then I was like, "Yes, but I'm going to quit. Bye." So, I don't want it to get to that point for you. So recruit allies. Find the people in your office who you can trust to back you up. And do not worry that you are too late. There is never, ever a bad time to come out. Not today, not tomorrow, not in 1,000 years. You are allowed to be addressed. You deserve to be addressed by the correct pronouns. It is part of who you are. And I don't care if you let it slide for a year already. I don't care if you let it slide for 10 years. You have that right. That is a right as a person. But you also have the right to not have to do that, right? It doesn't mean you have to just say, "Hey, guess what?" Like, if that's not safe for you, then I think that this is something on a larger kind of LGBTQ scale. This is kind of advice that I've seen given to people that I think it's okay not to come out too. I think it's okay not to talk about this stuff. I think it's okay if you feel comfortable holding off, or you feel all right holding off because it would be more dangerous to bring it up, or it would be a risk, or it just would make things toxic in that environment for you. I think you get to balance that. You get to decide who gets to have access to the truth of your personhood. I think that for some people, standing up and saying, "Hey, fuckboys, they, them pronouns," that is dangerous. I think that can be hard, and you need to recognize what is safe and what is smart for you, but don't use that as, you got to know yourself. And I trust you to do that. I trust you to know your circumstances. I trust you to know your situation. Be brave, take care of yourself, recruit allies, and let them do that work for you. Recruit an army of people who understand your pronouns. Because then you don't have to be in every conversation. You don't have to correct everybody's gendering of you in every conversation. This is why when somebody misgenders someone that is friends of mine, I will try my damnedest to correct them, because that takes a little bit of pressure off of that person. So yeah, I guess Night Eyes, find your allies, find the people that you trust. I hope there are some, and let them do some of that work for you. People who consider themselves friends and allies of non-binary people, do that work. If you hear somebody misgender a friend, then do it. Say, "Hey, actually, hold on. That's right. We should all be as cool as Sam." And you know that if Frodo, when he fucking returned from Mordor, was like, "Hi, everybody, I'm Frodo, and on my quest to deliver the ring to Mordor, I realized that I prefer they/them pronouns." You know that Sam would just be like, "Fuck yeah, I'm on it. I'm on Team Frodo." And every time Rosie or Merry or Pippin misgendered Frodo, Sam would be right there. Sam would be like, "Nope, Frodo uses they/them pronouns. Be like Sam, kids." Be like Sam. Support your local NB Hobbit. Now, guys, I hope that helped. If for no other reason, then I hope that I was able to bolster your morale a little bit. And sometimes it just takes being given, even by somebody who has no real bearing on your life, being given permission to do things the way that makes sense for you. So don't be scared. Correct people. Get yourself some allies. Get that flanking bonus. So our second question, less about gender, more about power structure. This is the other thing. And I apologize in advance if my inner Karl Marx emerges during this question, because it very well might. I have some feelings about power and work. Go figure. So TJ is our second question asker, and I'll read TJ's question for you because it's got some bullet points. There's some sub questions. So TJ says, I work for a large organization with a traditional hierarchical power structure, big old pyramid. You got your CEO on top, you got the proles at the bottom. There's a bunch of middle management in the middle. I've recently been made a team leader for my current project, and as a result, am now interacting with other people in leadership positions a lot more than when I was a normal member of my team. Right, so you've been raised up from the bottom level, and now you're in this nebulous middle where you might actually have to interact with corporate God once in a while. So as a result, I'm now interacting with other people in leadership positions a lot more than when I was a normal member of my team. These interactions makes me nervous and anxious for several reasons. Reason the first, I'm not the most social of people to begin with, and when I'm not acting in my area of expertise, I can be pretty awkward in work conversations. Second, they're total strangers I've never interacted with before this. Third, I'm used to these people being on the same level as my boss or my boss's boss, so all the hierarchical bullshit I'm used to comes in there. Fourth, these aren't optional relationships. Short of quitting my job, I have to interact with these people regularly, and the quality of these relationships will have a direct impact on how successful the project is. What advice do you have for building and maintaining positive relationships with people you work with when building and maintaining those relationships is now literally part of your job description and never was before? It's a lot. So let me active listening you for a second. What I am understanding here is you're being moved up the pyramid. And it feels weird because you now feel like there are expectations being placed upon you that you are not trained, prepared, or honestly interested in, right? You feel like you've been put into a position where, and I hope to Christ that you're being paid more for all this extra work that you have to do, because going to meetings is work. Terrible, terrible work. And I bet you have to go to a lot more meetings than you used to. So you're in this position now where your place in the great productive hive has been changed. You've been shifted, and now you're slightly more important than who you used to be. You've left behind some of your former coworkers, and now you exist in a higher echelon where you are reporting directly to the demigods of capitalism that you used to get to avoid by being lower on the chain, right? So, first of all, let me just tell you this: you will adapt. You'll adapt, right? So I know that right now you feel like they have lifted you from your proletarian workers floor, and they have put you in the gilded room amongst these others. But nobody else gets to define your role or your position socially. They get to decide what your title is, and that title might come with a bunch of baggage, but you're not worse or better than anybody else you work with. You just have a different job. That job is going to affect the way you interact with those other people, but you are not suddenly a bigger deal than you were before. The reason is you were a big deal before. You just didn't get recognized for it. So you have a different job to do, but you'll get used to that job, right? Some of this stuff is 100% just like a new thing, and you're feeling weird about it. And some of that social interaction will become less and less awkward as it becomes more and more formulaic. You will learn the new space in which you are as quickly as you learned your last space, right? I'm sure that it felt weird when you first got that job. When you were placed in the former position in the power structure, I bet you it felt like awkward too. So you'll learn these new people and you'll learn how to talk to them. And you may never become less awkward or more social than you currently are, but that's okay. You'll learn to cope. We all do, right? New things are something that human beings, for the most part, are pretty good at ameliorating, right? So yes, it's okay for you to feel terrified and weirded out and uncomfortable now, but that will get better. Interacting with total strangers is a thing, and I think that that's kind of ties into that first bit that you'll get used to it. Strangers don't stay strangers for very long. You'll learn them. You will learn their strengths and weaknesses. You'll figure out how many hit points they have, what kind of damage to deal. So you'll figure out what they're like with time, and you can give yourself some room for that. But I think the thing that does complicate this is that third point about them being former bosses. Now, I don't know what they are like. I don't know if you're being given the golden key to the executive washroom or whatever, right? I don't know if you are being treated like an ascended underling, or if they're still treating you like, what are you doing here? I'm still your boss. But hierarchies are hard to break, right? They are what make a lot of workplaces operate. They're what make a lot of societies function. And while they can be helpful occasionally to know who gets to make what decisions about what, I think that it would help if we could all look at work a little more like we look at a role-playing game. That's right, it's crossover time. So if we looked at work a little bit more like we look at a role-playing game, the dungeon master, despite the incredibly hierarchical title, is not a better person. They are not a more important person. They are not a more significant person than anyone else at the table. They just have a different job to do, right? Now, you used to be a PC, and now you're a dungeon master, and you were among other dungeon masters. Now, some of them are probably going to treat you like you're still a PC. They're going to still try to narrate for you. They're still going to try to tell you what the world is like. They will learn over time that you have the same agency and power as they do, right? Or at the very least, you've been given some additional agency. And the reason that this matters is that all of you are here ostensibly to do a job, right? To make the company money, which is an unfortunate reason to have to do anything, but that's really why you're all here, right? You're here to make the company money so that it can take a slice of that money and then give it back to you. You want that. The people above you want that. The CEO wants that. Ultimately, by participation, everybody in the company wants the same thing. But we forget that, and we can get caught up in the petty hierarchies of work, right? We can get caught up in the like, well, I'm the boss now, and you're not as important as me, or I get to be part of the bosses club, and I'm suddenly more important. I worked to get here, but you just got hired, right? And I think that that's a shitty way of looking at things, and that's an inbuilt kind of functional depression model that happens inside companies. So you're not going to escape the hierarchical bullshit. You won't. It will be present in the company from its DNA outwards. What you can do is find ways to exist in that structure and do your job in a way that makes you feel good and a way that contributes to your work. Now, I'm going to share a personal anecdote. I'm going to share a personal anecdote about working and having a person that was a coworker move into a position of being a boss, and something that fundamentally changed my relationship with that person and with work in general. So I used to work in advertising, and I was part of a team with some other people who were on the same kind of level of the hierarchy as me. And one of them was promoted to be in charge of the team that we were currently in, right? So we're all a team. Suddenly, this one person is now boss of the team. And I remember having a conversation with this guy where he was like, I know that I've been put in this position of leadership over you, right? I know that I'm your boss now. You report to me. And that when you do well, it's my job to reward you. And when you do shitty, it's my job to like give you a hard time. And that, yes, I have the ability to like change your life. But I want you to think of me as your friend first and your boss second. I don't want you to feel like our personal relationship has to change just because I'm in charge of you now. And I remember sitting there at lunch with this guy and trying so hard not to laugh. Not because I felt like mean-spirited or whatever, but because it just felt so idealistic and so... It was so naive. And I remember saying to him, I was like, dude, that's impossible. You decide how much money I make now. You can tell your boss whether or not you think that I deserve more money or not. You get to tell your boss whether I should work here or not. All of the work that I do, now you get to say whether it's good or not. How on earth could we possibly maintain an equal relationship when you have that power over me? He didn't understand. He was like, no, I think we can still be friends. And I was like, well, I'm glad that you think that, but I don't think that's possible. No, I can't. I'm not saying that you can't have two separate relationships with a person, right? You can be business partners and friends. You can be engaged in multiple relationships with people, but you have to be aware of that. So in the same way, TJ, you can still have a relationship with your former coworkers, but it has now become more complex. The more authority you have over a person, the less fair and equitable that relationship becomes, and the harder it is to maintain, because that stuff will come up. So I think the thing here is you have to recognize power imbalance and acknowledge it and not pretend like it isn't there. You're going to be treated slightly more like an equal by the people who used to be above you. And you're going to be treated differently by the people who you are now responsible for, right? You've moved up in the hierarchy. And that's the thing that I hate about hierarchies. I hate them. I hate them in work. This is why I think that I can't work in a structured environment like that, because I'm just so constantly aware of them, like a general sense of anxiety that they even exist in a work environment. This is why I hate them in relationships. I cannot abide a hierarchy because it's an outside force that you did not consent to that is fucking with your relationships. So it's tough. You have to acknowledge this change and you have to ride it out. And I hope that the relationships that you have with the people that you work with that are outside of work, I hope that those people who are your friends, who are also your coworkers, I hope that those relationships are strong enough to weather this change, because it is a change. And I think acknowledging it and talking about it and checking in with people is the only way that you can continue to function. Because as you say, these aren't optional relationships. So my advice for building and maintaining positive relationships with the people you work with is to recognize them for what they are. Right? I think this is true. If we take a step back, I think this is true of all relationships, whether you are coworkers, whether you're friends, whether you're sleeping together, whether you're in love, any mixture of those things, I think that recognizing the value and the importance of a relationship and figuring out the details of that relationship helps you navigate them safely. So I would think about that. Like, what is your relationship? Yes, they're not optional. You are being forced to have a business relationship with these people. What does that require? Right? What does it require? What do you need? To make that relationship work, you don't need to be friends. You don't need to hang out outside work. You need to attend meetings together. You need to synergize your business objectives. You need to write emails. Maybe you need to co-manage a team. But you don't need to be friends. You can be friendly, but you don't have to let these people into the deeper aspects of your life. So this might help around the social anxiety and the total strangeness. You don't have to build anything more than what your job demands. Now, I say all this without first acknowledging that maybe that's a little naive of me, right? Maybe it's a little naive of me to say, just do work with your coworkers and be friends with your friends, and you don't have to think about or worry about any of this stuff. Because some people work in environments where it is expected to be social. It is expected to go out for beers with the team. It is expected to do corporate retreats. It is expected to team build. And there may be unspoken social expectations around these things. And if that's the case, I'm sorry. I hate that stuff. I've been in that position too. Be aware of them, recognize them, and participate as much as you feel safe and comfortable doing. And if you find yourself in a position where you have to do a ton of social work to succeed at your job that you are not enjoying, quit. Which again, very flip of me to say, but that may be where you get to. But don't feel like you as a person are obligated to be friends with your coworkers. I'm so much a proponent of just like being open about relationships with people, whether they're coworkers or friends or whatever. Like telling your friends what you think of them and how you feel, even if you think it's obvious. Telling your coworkers when you value their contribution. Telling your boss when you appreciate their clear direction, right? Like just being upfront and honest with people can make things so much better, right? And I think that's really important. I think that like checking in with these things in an appropriate way is really important. So maybe that's something you can do. You know, maybe you can talk to your new coworkers, your new hierarchical structural interactors, and you can say, okay, so what do we need to do? You and me, what do we need to do to succeed together, right? Not as a team, but as coworkers. Like, what are you responsible for that now I'm tied to? Here's what I'm responsible for. What are you doing that can help me with that, right? Sit down with these people. You don't have to get to know them as people. You don't need to be like, are you married? How many wives do you have? What is your golf mastery level? Do you own vehicle? You can just have a conversation about job stuff. You can just be like, hey, so this is my new job and this is what I got to get done. And I understand that you are the adjutant of fastener division. Let's talk about how the adjutant of fastener division can assist me in my new role and how I can help you. What kind of fastener division tasks do you have that interact with my new job? Like, honestly, that's the thing, right? Just do that. Sit down with these people and just have these conversations. I know it feels weird and it seems weird, but that's where I would start. Don't feel like you have to interact with them socially. Don't feel like you have to be best buds with these people. If you want to be successful as a coworker, be successful as a coworker, right? and then talk it out. And do this, and this is for everybody, not just TJ, but do this with your friends, do this with your loved ones. Have these conversations, not just about the stuff that's going on in your life and in their life and whatever, but have conversations about your relationship with them, right? Tell them when they do something that you really appreciate. Let them in. Because you too, like TJ and his coworkers, are working on a project together, and that project is your friendship. Work and the rest of life is not that different. Work just has capitalism all over it, which it's not like our day-to-day life doesn't either. Just slightly different parameters. Yeah. So I could not possibly have a work-related episode without this question. I'm so glad that Anonymous asked this. It's a little twist on the usual, but if you tuned in to the work drama episode, you got to know this was going to be on the list. I am infatuated with a coworker and have not told them or confronted these feelings because I'm pretty sure he's straight and I am not. He is friendly, maybe flirtatious with me, but I don't think he sees me as anything other than a work friend. What do I do? Anonymous. God, it's like two very bad situations at once. I think this person is so cute, and I'm forced to sit here and stare across the office at him. Look at him. Brad, so handsome at his desk, standing there with his polo t-shirt and his headset. Oh, how I love him. Oh my, he has glanced my way and smiled. Oh, Brad, one day you will be mine. But like, honey, I know you think Brad is a 10, and Brad might be a work 10, but Brad is probably like a 6 or a 7 at best. Brad is probably straight. He's probably not flirting with you. I'm sorry. I just don't think that these situations, like if you had just told me I am infatuated with a coworker, what do? That would be a no. But I am infatuated with a coworker who I think is straight, maybe, and is flirting with me. I don't know. That's a double no. Like, I think that it is possible. I think it is absolutely possible to have romantic relationships with people you also work with. Lots and lots of people do it. We want to share the things that matter to us in our lives with the people that we love. I do not think that it is a universal rule that work and love or work and sex cannot be interacting. I think that it's totally possible, but I think Brad probably doesn't want to have sex with you. Brad probably doesn't want to fall in love with you and move to the Hamptons and wear polos together. I just think this is a bad scene because you're sitting here at your desk in love with Brad. Brad probably just thinks you're fine and whatever. And I just don't think that this is going to go away, right? I don't think this is going to go away that you're going to like. I don't think that if you confront Brad and say, I like that his name is Brad now. Yes, Dave. Pursuing this as a Brad idea. I think that if you confront Dave and say, Brad, you handsome devil, I want you to know that I think that your teal polo shirt is exceptionally sexual today and that your tan is making me aroused over here at my desk. I love you, Bradley. Let us make out in the men's washroom. Brad is not going to respond positively to that. Even if Brad is gay, and even if Brad has been giving you the hot eyes, it's just so entangled. I just don't think it's a safe idea. Infatuation like this in general, it's hard enough to just say to a person that you maybe like trust and care about already and say, hey, I have these like romance feelings about you. let alone Brad from BizDev, right? So some people might suggest to you, ask a friend, find out if Brad is straight or not. Does Brad have a boyfriend? Does Brad like the ladies? Right? Find that out, and then like just like hang out with Brad more, like sit next to him at the next company mixer, you know? Like, just there's a lot of artifice that people would suggest that you do, and I bet you have friends that are suggesting this to you. Do not do it. Just let Brad go. There are a million other Brads who are real life 10s, not just office 10s, and like, if you really cannot handle it, move desks. Right? Like, go to another desk, whatever. Like, there are so many other Brad alternatives in the world, right? Almond Brad, soy Brad, walnut Brad, raisin Brad, chocolate chip banana Brad. I'm hungry. What are we talking about? Anyway, you find somebody else who you can actually engage with in a relationship that isn't staring across your cubicle wall at Bradley over there. I think the thing is, and part of this is like, I'm having a feeling here where I don't want to tell you, like, just write Brad off completely, right? Like, I think that we can have, I think it's possible if you and Brad both have the emotional intelligence to handle it. I think that there is a world, and I have to believe that this is possible. I have to believe that it's possible that you and Brad could be friends, you could be coworkers, you could find out if Brad was straight or not, and in another context, you could date Brad if Brad was interested. I think that it is possible. There is a universe in which you and Brad could fall in love and get married and adopt a Malamute and live forever in Aspen. But like, holy shit, you are setting yourself up for so many obstacles between here and there. Go find yourself a Brad that is easy. This Brad is hard. This is hard Brad, and not in the way that you want. This Brad is a bad Brad, and you can find somebody that's going to be a lot less difficult to get at, who is going to just start off being accessible and interesting. And if you're getting off on being infatuated with Brad and not telling him if this is your fetish, fine, but keep it to yourself. There is so much fucking work here to get at Brad. And honey, Brad is not worth it. I promise you, Brad is not the superhero, hot body maniac you think he is. He is not going to drive you away in his Lamborghini for a night of Brad lovin'. He's just a person. And I guess this is a thing that we can say about infatuation in general. It's fun being infatuated. It's fun having like crushes on people and being like, oh yeah, they're so cute and cool. Look at Brad. Look at him with his TPS reports. Oh, look at him. He's look at that pie chart. Damn, Brad, you got such a good pie chart. Damn. But like, it doesn't have to go anywhere, right? And suffering your whole life, wondering if Brad loves you. You deserve better, Anonymous. You deserve better than what Brad the imaginary 10 can give you. You know, go find yourself somebody else who's cute and hot and definitely gay and who will want to date you. And you know what? Don't stop thinking about Brad if you don't want to, but don't be a creep about it. It doesn't sound like you are. You're keeping it to yourself. You haven't confronted the feelings. Like, it's nice to have cute people around you. I try to do it. I try to surround myself with people I like looking at, people that I respect. But honestly, I think that you can like Brad and think that he's hot and great without agonizing over whether or not you're going to get to be Mr. Brad too, right? It takes a lot of emotional labor and a lot of emotional intelligence to be okay with, and this is a thing, like I think we have a lot of language around desirability and a lot of language about wanting people. There's a lot of language in romance about ownership. I think it's okay for you to admire Brad, but do not want to own Brad. Brad is a person. Brad with his $80 haircut and his tan, his khakis. You can love that Brad exists, but you don't have to want him, right? And this goes for everybody. Nobody should feel like they're on the hunt. Nobody should feel like they are trying to get someone, right? Because people are people and not objects. Even hot Brad. I guess if he was Christian, he might be hot cross Brad. Anyway, the point here is just that, like, you can do better. You can do better and you can do easier. And love is not difficult. Romance does not have to be difficult for you to value it. We don't need to struggle to be loved. We just need to be loved and for it to be a real thing. And what you're feeling for Brad, that's real, but it doesn't have to become anything else. Plus, he's probably straight anyway, so just say goodbye to Brad. Look at him from a distance. And then go and find yourself somebody who's not going to be such a chase, right? Find somebody that you can just be with. Find somebody who's going to look at you the way you look at Brad. That's what you want. I've said Brad more times this morning than I have in the whole rest of my life combined. So I dedicate this episode to Brads everywhere. Be your own Brad. That's it. That's our episode for today. This has been episode number 28 of Hot for Teacher, Workplace Drama Edition. I hope that whatever you do in your life to make money, whether you're a YouTube celebrity who can't learn the rules of Dungeons and Dragons to save your life, or a construction worker, the two jobs, whatever you do in your life, I hope that your social situation at work is not complicated, that it's not hurting you. And I hope that some of the advice that I was able to give you today helped. And if not, you can always come and ask your own questions. If you're like, damn it, Adam, you didn't answer my question at all. That's not helpful. I want help. Go to my website, www.adam-goebel.com. Click on the Hot for Teacher link. Fill out the form. Submit your questions, and I will try to answer them in the future. I do love doing this show, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work and for your emotional vulnerability for putting in these questions. I really appreciate it. You make the show possible. And carry on the conversation. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to your friends about your coworkers. Find the courage to talk to Brad if you want, but don't expect anything out of that interaction. Go forth and care about people, even though sometimes it's hard. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you next time.